Welcome to our podcast. If you understand 50% of this, you're on the right track.
Have you ever sat in a room full of people speaking English and only caught half of what they were saying, but still felt something inside you click? Like you didn't get every word, but you got the point, and it made you want to keep listening, not because you understood everything, but because something told you you were finally getting somewhere?
That feeling? It's not confusion, it's progress. Most people don't realize that understanding 50% isn't failure. It's the beginning of fluency, because your brain is finally doing something it couldn't do before. It's guessing. It's filling in the blanks. It's listening beyond the words. We grow up thinking understanding should be perfect, complete, immediate.
Like if we can't understand 100%, we're not good enough. But that's not how humans learn. You learned your first language by hearing it for years, before you ever spoke a full sentence. Nobody expected you to get it all from day one. So why do we expect that now?
Maybe because we've been taught that language is a test. Something you pass or fail. But language isn't a test. It's a conversation. And in every good conversation, there are pauses, stumbles, guesses, and moments of silence. That silence you feel when you're listening, when you're not quite sure what a word means, when you're trying to hold on to the sentence before it slips away. That silence is not a weakness. It's space being made for understanding to happen. It's the pause before the leap, the breath before the answer. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to understand enough to keep going.
Exactly. I remember when I first moved abroad and started listening to people talk around me, at cafes, on the train, in classrooms, and I felt like I was drowning in words. I'd catch pieces, a word here, a phrase there, the way someone laughed after saying something, and I'd guess maybe that was a joke. I used to write down sentences I didn't understand, listen to them again and again, not because I wanted to memorize them, but because I wanted to feel the rhythm. Language isn't just meaning, it's music. And once your ears start tuning into the music, you start dancing with it, even if you miss a few steps. Understanding 50% means you're listening with curiosity, not fear. It means you're not just translating in your head. You're thinking in the new language. You're starting to trust that the rest will come. There's this myth that fluency is about speaking fast, using big words, sounding like a native. But real fluency, the kind that stays with you, is about comfort in the unknown. It's about being okay with not knowing every word and still joining the conversation, still responding, still being there. And honestly, if you only understand half of what's being said, but you feel the emotion behind it, you're connecting in a way that grammar books can't teach you.
You know what I wish someone had told me earlier? That understanding only part of something doesn't mean you're not smart. It means you're learning the real way. Like if everything made perfect sense all the time, you wouldn't be growing. You'd just be repeating what you already know. And what's the point in that? People get so scared of not knowing. But not knowing is exactly where new things begin. It's where your brain starts reaching, stretching, building new bridges between ideas. Think about it. When you listen to something in English and understand half, you're not failing. You're waking up your brain. You're training it to handle the unknown. And that's a skill you'll use way beyond just learning English. The people who become confident speakers aren't the ones who understood everything right away. They're the ones who stayed curious. They kept showing up. They kept asking questions, even if they sounded simple. They kept listening, even when it felt pointless. Because eventually, things do start to click. The words stop sounding like noise and start sounding like thoughts. And those thoughts start sounding like yours. There's something really beautiful about that process, because it means your brain isn't just learning a language. It's learning how to trust itself. And trust is a huge part of this. Trusting that you can figure things out, even when the sentence feels too fast, or the words are too new, or the topic is something you've never heard before. The moment you stop needing everything to be clear, and you start believing in your ability to figure it out as you go, that's when things shift. That's when you go from student to speaker, from someone who listens quietly, to someone who can jump in, even if you don't have the perfect words yet. And guess what? Nobody does. Even native speakers don't say things perfectly. They pause. They repeat. They change what they're saying halfway through. They forget words all the time. We've built up this idea that speaking English means speaking like a robot. No mistakes, no pauses, no emotion, just perfect grammar and vocabulary. But that's not real. That's not human. And language is the most human thing we have. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you're only catching parts, but something in you still wants to keep going, don't stop. That's not failure. That's exactly where growth begins. Because the point isn't to understand everything today. The point is to not give up when you don't. Every time you stay in the conversation, even if you're confused, even if you feel lost, you're building a version of yourself that's brave and open and willing to learn in the mess.
Yes, I feel that so much. And you know what else? We don't talk enough about how lonely learning a language can feel sometimes, especially when you're the only one in your family or your group of friends doing it. You're spending hours listening, reading, practicing, and nobody really sees how much effort that takes. It's invisible work, and it's quiet work. There are days when you feel like you're making no progress, like all the words are flying past you, and you wonder, am I even getting better? Is this worth it? And I just want to say, yes, it's worth it. Because every small thing you do, every video you try to understand, every word you look up, every sentence you say out loud, even just to yourself, it all counts. It's not wasted. It's building something inside you, even if you can't see it yet. I think the hardest part is that improvement doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes you learn 100 new words, but still feel stuck in a real conversation. Sometimes you finally understand a full paragraph, but freeze when someone asks you a question in real life. That's normal. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means your brain is still connecting the dots. And those dots connect quietly, slowly, one at a time. Another thing we forget, learning English isn't just about speaking it. It's also about understanding people, how they think, how they feel, what they really mean beyond the words. When you're listening to English, you're not just learning vocabulary. You're learning how different people express love, how they argue, how they comfort someone, how they joke, how they say sorry or I miss you or I'm proud of you in their own way. That's culture. And that part isn't in grammar books either. You learn it by listening, by being present, by feeling the tone of what people say, not just the words. So when you catch 50% of a sentence, sometimes what you're really catching is someone's feeling. And that's just as important as the meaning. And one more thing I've learned. You don't have to wait until you're fluent to use English in your life. You can use it now to write a message, to leave a comment, to think about your day in your head, or even just to whisper your thoughts out loud at night. You don't need permission. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be willing to show up, even when it's hard, even when it's slow, even when your voice shakes a little. That's where the real fluency begins. Not in your grammar, but in your courage.
Yes, that's so true. And I think it's important to also talk about how tiring learning a language can be, not just mentally, but emotionally too. Because it's not just about remembering words. It's about facing your doubts every single day. You sit there with your notebook or your headphones, and you're focusing, but sometimes your mind is just tired, and you feel guilty for needing a break. But here's the thing. Taking a break doesn't mean giving up. It means you're human. Sometimes your brain needs time to rest, so it can process everything you've been feeding it. So even if you stop for a day, or a week, or longer, you're not starting over. You're just picking up where you left off, with a bit more space in your head this time. You're still growing, even in the silence. And I know this might sound strange, but some of the biggest progress happens when you're not studying. Like when you're just living your life, and suddenly you hear a word you used to struggle with, and it finally makes sense, without you trying. Or when you're watching a movie, and you laugh at a joke in English, without needing subtitles, and you realize, oh, I got that. I really got that. Those moments feel small, but they're huge. They remind you that language isn't just about tests or lessons. It's about life. It's about being able to understand a song that makes you feel something, or watching a video that inspires you, or reading a comment from someone on the other side of the world, and actually feeling connected. That connection is everything, because language is really just a bridge between you and other people. And every new word you learn, every phrase you practice, is one more step across that bridge. So even if it feels slow, even if some days you feel like you're walking in circles, you're still moving. And the best part? You don't have to do it all alone. There are people everywhere, just like you, who are trying, who are struggling, who are listening and repeating and getting lost, and coming back anyway. And when you understand even 50% of what someone says, you've already started a connection. You've already opened the door. That's not a small win. That's everything.
Yes, I'm really glad you said that. Because sometimes we forget that we don't have to be learning all the time to be improving. Sometimes just living with the language around you is enough. You don't have to be doing grammar exercises every hour or memorizing 100 new words a day. Some days, it's enough to listen to one podcast or rewatch your favorite movie in English with no pressure, or just read the comments under a video and see how people talk naturally. Those small moments count. They add up. And you know what else I think people need to hear more often? That it's okay to repeat things. Actually, it's more than okay. It's one of the best ways to learn. You don't need a new lesson every day. Sometimes your brain learns more when it sees the same thing again and again, until it becomes familiar, until it sticks, without effort. We live in a world that keeps telling us to move fast, learn more, do better. But language doesn't grow that way. Language grows like a plant, slow, quiet, with patience and care. And here's something else we haven't talked about yet: self-talk. That voice inside your head that comments on everything. When you're learning English, that voice can either help you or make things harder. If you're always telling yourself, "I'm bad at this. I'll never speak like them. I'm too old," your brain starts to believe it, even if it's not true. But if you can slowly change that voice, even just a little, if you can start saying, "I didn't understand that, but I'm learning. This is hard, but I'm trying. I'm not perfect, but I'm showing up," everything shifts. You start to enjoy the process. You start to feel proud of your effort, not just the results. And that matters. Because the journey isn't just about English. It's about how you treat yourself along the way. You don't need to wait until you're fluent to feel good about yourself. You can feel proud right now for showing up, for listening, for trying, even when it's uncomfortable. And you can also allow yourself to laugh when you make mistakes, not in a mean way, but in a soft, gentle way, because mistakes mean you're in it. You're doing the work. You're not standing on the sidelines. You're in the game. And that's more than most people can say. So if you understand even 50% of this conversation, you're doing something right. Because the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to keep going.
Yes, that really hits home, especially what you said about self-talk. Because honestly, the way we talk to ourselves matters more than we realize. You can have all the right learning tools, the best apps, the best teachers, but if the voice in your head keeps saying you're not good enough, it's going to be so hard to move forward. And it's not just about the language. It's about how much you believe in yourself. Sometimes the biggest block isn't grammar. It's fear of being judged, fear of sounding silly, fear of being misunderstood. And those fears can grow loud, especially when you're just starting out. But the truth is, everyone sounds a little awkward in the beginning. Even kids do when they first learn to speak. No one is born fluent. Fluency is just the result of being brave over and over again. And I wish more people understood that mistakes aren't signs of failure. They're signs of action. They mean you're trying, you're practicing. You're learning in real life, not just on paper. And here's something else people don't talk about much. You don't have to love every part of the process to keep going. You can feel bored sometimes. You can feel frustrated. You can feel stuck. That doesn't mean you're not doing it right. It just means you're human. There are going to be good days when you feel strong and motivated and everything clicks. And there will be quiet days when your brain feels full and you just want to lie down and watch something easy. Both kinds of days are part of learning. Both are valid. And one more thing I've learned that's really helped me: you don't have to be serious all the time. You can make learning fun. You can laugh. You can play with words. You can make weird voices when you practice speaking. You can sing songs, even off-key. You can watch silly shows, or read simple comics, or talk to yourself in the mirror like you're in a drama. The more you enjoy it, the longer you'll stick with it. And the longer you stick with it, the better you'll get. Not because you pushed yourself harder, but because you stayed. You didn't quit. So if you're still here, still listening, still trying to understand, even if it's just 50%, then that's already more than enough. You're doing better than you think.
Yes. And you know what else I think we don't say enough? That it's okay to grow slowly. That progress that no one sees is still progress. Because sometimes you're improving in ways that are invisible at first. Like, your ear gets a little better at catching sounds, or your mouth starts to shape the words more naturally, or you don't panic as much when someone speaks to you. Those aren't things you can show on a test, but they matter. They're the small wins that build the big ones. And I think there's this pressure people feel like they need to be fluent fast, or else they've failed. But why? Who says you have to be done in 6 months? This isn't a race. There's no finish line. Language is something you carry with you, and it keeps growing, as long as you let it. And something else I've been thinking about lately, it's how powerful understanding someone can feel. Not just their words, but their story, their emotions. Like when someone shares something about their life, and you actually get it. Not because it's perfect grammar, but because you feel the meaning behind it. That's when English stops being a subject and starts being a real connection. And sometimes we forget that part. We think we need to speak like a native or understand everything before we can have real conversations. But the truth is, real connection doesn't need perfection. It needs honesty. It needs patience. And most of all, it needs courage. Courage to speak, even when your voice shakes. Courage to listen, even when you don't catch every word. Courage to keep going, even when you feel like giving up. And I just want to say this again, to anyone who feels stuck right now. You're doing better than you think. You're showing up. You're facing something hard, and you're doing it anyway. That takes strength, so much more than people realize. And one day, you'll look back, and the things that felt impossible will feel normal. The words that used to scare you will come out of your mouth without fear.
You know what I think we haven't talked about yet? How personal learning can be. Like, nobody learns the same way. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay. There's no one right way to learn a language. Some people need structure. They like grammar rules and textbooks. Others need freedom. They learn better by speaking, listening, and just living with the language. And it's so important to be kind to yourself while you figure out what works for you. Because sometimes you watch others, and it looks like they're moving faster, like they're getting better quicker, and it makes you feel like you're behind. But the truth is, you're not behind. You're just on your path. And your path is valid, even if it looks different. Some people need quiet. Some people need noise. Some people learn best at night, alone in their room. Others learn through laughter, with friends. Some people need music, color, flashcards, games. Others need silence and space and time. And that's something nobody tells you at the start. They give you one method, one course, one timeline. But you're not a robot. You're a human, with a heart and a history and your own rhythm. And it's also okay to change how you learn. Sometimes something works for a while, and then it stops working. That's not a sign you failed. That's a sign you're growing. Because growth means outgrowing things. So if reading used to help you, but now it doesn't, try something else. If grammar used to feel good, but now it feels heavy, switch it up. Try a podcast. Try speaking to a friend. Try watching your favorite shows with subtitles. Make it yours. Make it something that fits your life, not something that burns you out. And another thing I've realized, rest is also part of learning. You don't have to be working all the time. You can take breaks. You can take days off. Your brain needs time to absorb things. Even when it looks like you're doing nothing, your mind is processing. Language sinks in when you rest, when you dream, when you breathe. So don't feel guilty if you need to pause. Don't beat yourself up if you're tired. Resting isn't quitting. It's preparing. It's part of the cycle. And the people who make it far are not the ones who work the hardest every single day. They're the ones who listen to themselves and take care of their energy. So maybe the best question to ask isn't, how fast can I learn English? Maybe it's, how gently can I walk this path so that I don't give up halfway? Because you deserve to enjoy the journey. You deserve to feel peace while you grow. And the more the process feels kind, the longer you'll stay with it. And the more natural your English will become.
Yes, I completely agree. And something I've been thinking about is how we often forget to celebrate the small victories. When we're focused on reaching the end goal, we sometimes miss the little steps along the way. Like when you finally understand a joke in English, or when you get through a conversation without feeling nervous. Those moments are huge. They show you that you're moving forward, even when it doesn't feel like it. And celebrating those moments, no matter how small, is a way to remind yourself that you're doing the right thing. I think it's easy to get caught up in the idea of perfection. We often think, I need to speak perfectly. I need to understand everything. But the truth is, language isn't about perfection. It's about communication. It's about connection. And as long as you're getting your message across, you're succeeding. And let's not forget how much bravery it takes to keep going. When you're struggling, I remember when I first started learning, there were days when I felt so frustrated. It felt like no matter how hard I tried, I just wasn't improving fast enough. But then I realized it wasn't about being perfect right away. It was about showing up every day. It was about doing the best I could, even when I didn't feel confident. And those moments of struggle, they actually make you stronger. They teach you patience, perseverance, and the importance of being kind to yourself. Because there's no shortcut to learning, it's a process. And every step, no matter how small, is part of that process. And I think there's something really powerful in being okay with not being perfect. You know, so many of us are afraid to make mistakes, especially when it comes to speaking. But the truth is, mistakes are one of the best ways to learn. They're the moments when we grow, when we learn what works and what doesn't. And the more we embrace that, the easier it becomes to move forward. So yes, if you understand just 50% of what's being said, you're doing great. You're on the right track. Because understanding, even if it's only half, is still progress. It's still a step forward. And that's what matters. Taking those small steps and keeping your eyes on the path, knowing that each one is leading you closer to where you want to be. And when we talk about language learning, it's not just about vocabulary or grammar. It's about the experiences, the connections, the growth we go through. Learning a language isn't just about mastering words, it's about mastering yourself. It's about learning patience, persistence, and confidence. And sometimes, the best thing we can do for ourselves is to simply give ourselves permission to be imperfect, to stop comparing ourselves to others and focus on our own journey. Because your journey is unique, and no one else can walk it for you.
Yes, I think you're completely right. And I'd like to add something that I think we all forget sometimes. It's okay to have bad days, and it's okay to feel frustrated. Sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to be better, to learn faster. But the reality is, there will be days when you just don't feel like it. You won't want to study. You'll feel tired or distracted. And that's normal. It happens to everyone. The important thing is to not be too hard on yourself during those days. Those moments don't define your progress. And I think that's something we really need to learn. To separate our bad days from our journey. A bad day doesn't mean you're not moving forward. It's just one day, and the next day, you can start fresh. Also, I want to remind everyone that small changes add up. You don't need to see huge improvements every day. Sometimes just understanding a word you didn't know before, or being able to order coffee in English without feeling anxious, that's a win. And those wins, when they add up, make a massive difference over time. It's like building a house. You can't do it all at once. You start with a few bricks, and then you keep adding more. And before you know it, you have a strong foundation. One of the things I've realized is that learning isn't just about studying words or grammar. It's about learning to trust yourself. It's about believing that even when things seem hard, you can do it. Because at the end of the day, you're your own best teacher. You know what you need. You know what works for you. And the more you trust yourself, the more you'll see growth. I also want to talk about something that's been on my mind lately. The power of community. Learning doesn't have to be a lonely experience. Yes, you're putting in the effort alone, but you don't have to carry that weight by yourself. There are so many communities out there, groups, forums, people on the same journey, who are going through the same things. And it can be so helpful to connect with others, to share your struggles, your victories, and to know you're not alone. Sometimes, just talking to someone else who understands what you're going through can make everything feel a little lighter, and it can remind you that everyone is at different points in their journey. So don't be afraid to reach out. Find people who inspire you. Find people who make you feel seen. And remember, their progress doesn't take away from yours. In fact, it can motivate you to keep going. And finally, I want to say, be proud of how far you've come, even when you can't see it. Every time you push through a challenge, every time you understand something you didn't before, you're building something bigger than just language skills. You're building your own strength. You're showing yourself that you can handle hard things.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with what you've said. And there's another point I'd like to add to this conversation. Something that we often overlook when we're learning a language or going through any kind of personal growth. It's the idea of embracing the discomfort. I think a lot of times when things start to feel challenging, our instinct is to avoid it, right? We want to retreat, to take a step back and feel comfortable again. But growth rarely happens in comfort. It happens when we push ourselves a little bit further than we thought we could go. When we're uncomfortable, it means we're stretching ourselves. We're stepping outside of our safe zone, and that's where real learning happens. I think it's important to understand that being uncomfortable doesn't mean we're failing. In fact, it's usually the opposite. It means we're learning something new, something we didn't know before. And yes, it might be hard, it might feel awkward, and there might be moments when we want to give up. But those moments when you push through, those are the ones that change you. And it's okay to feel uncertain or nervous. That's part of the process. It's okay to feel unsure of your progress, because as long as you keep going, that discomfort will eventually fade into something much more powerful. And this is something that applies not just to language learning, but to life in general. Whenever you're doing something important, something that really matters to you, there will always be a little bit of discomfort. There will be moments where it feels like things aren't going your way. But that doesn't mean you're not moving forward. That's just part of the journey. The key is to stay consistent and keep going even when you don't feel like it. And another thing I've noticed is how important patience is in this whole process. I'm sure we all get impatient sometimes, right? We want to speak fluently, we want to understand everything immediately, and we want to see results as soon as possible. But language learning, just like any skill, takes time. And sometimes progress isn't always visible. It might take weeks, months, even years before you notice big changes. But the growth is happening even if you can't see it right away. And you have to trust that the work you're putting in is building up to something meaningful. I also want to remind everyone to keep their why in mind. Why are you learning this language in the first place? Is it to connect with people? To open new opportunities? To challenge yourself? Whatever your reason is, hold on to that. Because when things get tough, when you feel like you're not improving fast enough, it's that why that will keep you going. It's the reason you started, and it's the motivation to keep moving forward, even on the days when you don't feel like it. And I think we should wrap up here. Thanks a lot for listening all the way through. If this video meant something to you, even just a little, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need it too. Let us know what you felt in the comments. We really want to hear from you. Take care and see you in the next video.